Welcome back to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. We are thrilled to present our new fall series. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. CVJS and I walk in solidarity and as allies for equality, justice, and respect because Black Lives Matter. And may I please urge all of you to get out and vote. I'm Helen Pickett, and today's guest, our first guest of the fall series, is Kyle Abraham, the artistic director and founder of Abraham in Motion, and he is also a visiting professor in residence at UCLA. We are having our first in-depth conversation today. Welcome, Kyle.
Hey.
Hi. It's so good to see you. So I'm really excited. You know, we've texted. Throughout the years we have dear dancers that we know that you've worked with quite often. So I feel like we know each other, but this is our first real chat together, and I'm really happy to be here with you.
Yeah, I think one of my first company members and one of my closest alumni, shall we say, you did her senior project purchase. Amber Parker.
I love Amber.
Yeah. She was one of my first muse.
That's so weird because because Malik and Shalvar as well.
Yeah, I love those gentlemen.
Yeah, and Malik I knew as a young man, met him for the first time in Jacob's Pillow.
Oh, right.
Shalvar at Purchase, and I put him, it was one of my first pieces, and I he was a freshman, so it's like for juniors and seniors, and I was like, no, I want that kid. Yeah, so Amber, man, oh man, I love her. If you talk to her anytime soon, tell her that big love.
I will. Yeah, I'll send it her way.
Yeah. So, I actually just want to start right out the gate with the fact that you're having a benefit soon.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. It's on Wednesday, whatever the date Wednesday is, at 7 p.m. And you can RSVP at giverly.us/A.I.M homecoming. It's our annual homecoming event.
Okay.
We've done them every year for the last however many years. Of course, this year being virtual. We have the great pleasure of honoring Misty Copeland this year as our honoree. Previous honorees include Robert Battle, Carrie Mae Weems, Taylor Stanley, Wendy Whalen. Just a really, Valentino Carlotti. We've had a really, really great group of honorees over the years. So it's just really special for us to have an opportunity to celebrate Misty and all that she does for our community, and just the wonderful human being and artist that she is.
And it's virtual.
It's virtual, yeah. So people they'll get a glimpse of A.I.M's history a good bit, and some of information about where we're going forward, and I hope that people can spend a little time with us on that evening. And there's events going on all week. Monday, there'll be the online auction. The silent auction opens up on Monday, and it'll run through the week. Wednesday will be the homecoming event, and there's a masterclass that'll be taught by Tamisha Guy on Saturday. So if people RSVP for that as well, that'd be great.
Wow, so it's actually a week of celebration.
Yeah. That's a week.
after this long, right?
Yeah.
At this point, I also celebrate my birthday for a week. I'm like, you know what? A good time for a week.
I would if I felt like I had the friends to get me through a full week.
Oh, it's not even, well, that's a wonderful idea. I even, I do this primarily alone. So.
Yeah, I know that. I definitely know that life.
Okay, so always the first question for everyone, what part of the world are you in?
I am currently in Fort Greene, Brooklyn.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Did you think I was in LA?
I thought you were in LA.
Everybody thinks I'm in LA. That's because I, bi-coastal.
That's why I said
I'm coming out. That goes yeah.
But that's why I said it was early for you. It's not. It's 12 noon.
Yeah, it's, well, I mean, it depends on who you're speaking to, really. I was watching Survivor until 2 o'clock in the morning, so you know.
Oh gosh, you know what? I started watching because it's Halloween time. Netflix has all of these you know, scary series. So I always think I was watching The Haunting of Bly or whatever.
Oh my God.
I know. I was like, I can't watch this at night.
Yeah, I can't do that.
All right. So, you know, I also, let's see, I guess, you know, some of these questions come also because I'm a choreographer and creator, and I always love talking and hearing about what process is for other creators and choreographers. So I want to start with your creative approach. What is an example of how you start a process? I know this is kind of an amorphous question, but so, you know, how are the components puzzled together? What devices do you utilize to create these worlds?
That's a good question. I think it varies project to project, really. For the most part, I do start off with a little bit of writing. I may have an idea and then I just try and create some language around it, just as kind of guidepost for me to return to at some point once I get into the studio. In a lot of cases, depending on what that work is, music will play a heavy part in that research and or writing or reading. So in a case of an upcoming project, I've been studying some mythology and folklore, although that music world landscape was already in the picture from the onset of the commission. It's a work inspired by Mozart's Requiem, but wanting to it's a full reimagining of the Requiem. But because so much of my work deals with death in some ways, or the unjust deaths that and killings of Black and brown bodies, I wanted to find a different point of entry into that material and try and find a way to think about reincarnation or the afterlife, and try and kind of like make this totally different point of entry for that type of work. So it can really vary. I think during this quarantine time, I started making without a lot of those steps. Making something with two of my male dancers, CJ, Claude Johnson, and Donovan Reed. Both of them, I just was like, I want to see the two of you in a space, no music. Let's just create some material and create a dialogue between the two of you, just based on a lot of our culture in some way. So we kind of just started playing around with that, making other solo ideas for some of the dancers, not necessarily with a large kind of process that would normally come into the picture with that writing, or spending maybe a year to 2 years studying music prior to going in the studio. This is very, very different. But as I'm saying, hopefully it varies from project to project.
You know, just piggybacking on, you know, creating during this time. I don't know if you have found this, but like you, I like process, right? And I also write as well. But process is one of the most invigorating parts of creating, you know, before I even get in that studio, especially if I think about, if I know the dancers, right? Like you spoke, you know, two of your dancers. But I have felt, because I'm also doing dances for film, it's really, it's less pressure as far as production. That looking back on these 7 months, and I'm thinking, I am creating out of the pure joy to create again. Have you found that?
I'm on both ends of that spectrum.
Oh, because it's a commission. It is a commission. I understand. Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, the stuff with the CJ and the art with CJ and Donovan, that work, and some of these other projects I'm making for A.I.M, they really seem like, yes, making art for art's sake. There are some other commissions that I'm on a very short timeline, and the process really, it's not even microwave. It's really, I'm really trying not to get in my feelings really about it, because I really, especially if I'm working on a solo for someone, I really want to know more about them, and I want to have that break in the middle of a rehearsal where we just talk about our lives and our experiences, and that's what then makes the art. Yeah. And you know, I'm making a solo for a dancer right now that we're not able to be in the studio together at all. And so that has its, definitely has its disadvantages. But on the plus side, I get to bring in another dancer that I've worked with over the years into the studio to kind of help me build, to then have them reset it. So it gives me an opportunity to, you know, at least have another moment with a dancer that I've gotten to work with over the years, and just see how that conversation continues to transfer from one body to another, or one artist to another. So it's really interesting, and definitely challenging in the same way that it is freeing.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but man, I've always known this somehow. I'm very connected to the sensory system, right? As a person, yeah. But man, the Zoom, the eye fatigue, and then coupled with the fact that none of those other senses, except for the expression, the word, and the eyes, man, that I have found like, you know, like if I could only like just like, you know, I find myself sometimes reaching. It's so, you know, I don't know. I don't know if you found that, but that's something I found as far as one of the challenges.
Well, I feel like one of my big challenges is like having to choreograph in my apartment and trying to find the angle and like adjusting my screen like this. Can you see me better now? How's this?
I know. And man, my outfits are nothing like they would be in the studio.
Yeah, you know, whatever.
Exactly. So, oh, yeah, okay, so here we are. Okay, so we kind of covered this. So you don't really, I'm gonna ask a question. Do you describe yourself as an artist with, now I say defining style, and what I mean by that is that there are artists that really establish a firm look, style, feel, and then they run with that. Or are you, do you reimagine each work within that style? Or does each work find its style, its pulse, its life through the theme, through the music, through the people? And you did go into this, but can you expound on that at all?
I want to choose option D. You gave me A, B, and C. I'll take it all of the above.
Okay.
But I'll try and shorten my answer because I'm a tangent queen. I think the thing is, I think it's I feel like I have a certain way of moving. I try and talk about my movement aesthetic as a postmodern gumbo. I love kind of this. I love what postmodernism is and or was. And think about kind of whatever's at that root of that gumbo, and kind of addressing my connection to hip hop and house music, social dance as part of my entry into just movement in general. So all of that plays a part, and everything that I have studied and learned plays a part in what it is I do. This is not a ballet body in any way, shape, or form. But I love that form, and so I have some of that information. I love Cunningham, I love Graham, I love all dance forms, really. And if I've studied it, or if I've had time to really just kind of watch in admiration, it may find its way into what we do in the studio. Mm-hmm. Now, along with that, I do try to think about trying to make each work very different from the previous. So while I'm making this reimagined Mozart Requiem, I'm also finishing up an evening length dance set to the music of D'Angelo. So very different sonic worlds, and kind of really communities in some way that we're creating on stage. So the movement sensibility has to be different. I guess it doesn't have to be, but I think it's I think it has to be. It has to be for an audience and for me and for my collaborators. I try to make sure that they can have a little bit of a break from whatever it is we're doing.
Yeah.
So in 2016 and 2017, while we were working on Dearest Home, a work about love, longing, and loss, set in silence, only solos and duets with one trio in that project, we also worked on a dance that was all about being this group, a core group of individuals dancing to house and hip hop music. So it's like, okay, we worked on this dance in silence for however many hours in the day where no one else, we're not really interacting with that many people. And let's come back in the space a couple hours later or the next day and just play some beats and just all be together. And it's important for me to have that kind of duality or creative kind of, I don't know, I don't want to say like bipolarity, but it kind of is in some way. And I really like that. I need to work like that a bit. So yeah, I think it is an option D.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you. I hear you. One thing that came to mind is, so when you're working on this piece that's primarily solos or duets and only one trio, question, is everybody in that room working separately, or is it literally one person at a time in the room?
Well, my favorite time is when it's just one person in a room, because we can get really deep. I love that. But when we get to the place where we are running the dance, everyone is there.
Okay.
And it's a really complicated thing, right? Because I have over the years asked the dancers as collaborators for their input. So if I really, in a lot of it, expect them to be watching, but a lot of times they're not, for a host of reasons. Maybe they're not watching because they need to really try and find a way to get into the zone for the solo or duet that they're doing, knowing that those themes are so heavy and fragile. So maybe they need to kind of like, I'm just gonna write my journal and I'm gonna kind of make have a timer on my phone to know when to start getting ready.
But are they in the room when they're writing in their journal?
Yeah, everyone's in the room.
So that's what I wanted to ask, because I speak very often of community as well. I like building worlds and community. It's important to me. I feel, well, it's an important subject, right?
Yeah.
But my question is, so you have the people that are in the room, you're going deep with one person, right? But they're doing their own thing. They're in their journal, or they're doing what they need to do to find their way into their specific dance. But then you say, then we put on the music the next day and we just dance together. I've had this question in myself for a long time, that even though we are working separately within the same room, there is community there, because it is proprioceptive. It is like, let's say, collective consciousness, right? Jung. And so I'm wondering about if that kind of deepens the next day's dance together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like maybe it's almost the opposite, though. I feel like the isolation that you feel and the vulnerability that you feel in that solo or duet world, I think it makes you crave that space when you are together in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah. So you're almost more, it takes you a bit longer to break into the community feel, maybe.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, it is definitely hard for me. I think it's a whole other layered complication around what you and I do. You know, I think I definitely have realized, especially during this COVID time, when if I can be in any space outdoors with a dancer, it can only be 1 to 2 dancers.
Yeah.
And I realize and recognize in myself that I am a much better director and choreographer when I'm working like that than when I'm working with 8 to 10 dancers in a room. Because I feel like a party host. Like, you want to make sure everyone's having a good time.
Yes.
And, you know, like I don't feel like I can and or should go super deep with notes and corrections for one dancer, because everyone's there. And even if someone who is the most like tuned into whatever movement sensibility that you're thinking about for that work in particular, you probably still have notes for them, but in the case where you have those 8 to 10 dancers, you're like, oh, they'll be fine. Let me, and so not everyone's getting the attention that they really need, regardless of where they're at in that movement, sensibility, and quality.
I always found that also when I was teaching. Man, I tried to include every last one of those kids, or young people or college age people. And, after years and years, I realized it's kind of a disservice to try that instead of just be in the room, disseminate the information, and try to get to every one of those people singularly within that class.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's party host is a great term. Yeah. Can you describe your relationship? We've kind of gone over this. Well, I can ask this. Do musical memories create scenarios for you? You touched on it, but maybe go a little deeper for that.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, musical scenarios, I think for me, and one of the greatest examples of that is a work of ours called The Radio Show. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of The Radio Show. So much of the music that's in that show is, in a lot of ways, reflecting on road trips I took with my family from Pittsburgh to Detroit in the summers, listening to Entombed's Juicy, Shuggie Otis, like there's just so much music that, you have a certain kind of sonic kind of connection to memory that's really exciting to explore. This D'Angelo work that we're making, it's called An Untitled Love. So much of D'Angelo's catalog, I mean, has played such a huge part in my life. I mean, I some things I even like equate with my father in a really bizarre way, because he just knew how much I loved that music and loved D'Angelo's music. D'Angelo's first album came out when I was in my first year at college. And although people usually think about me maybe with Purchase, because that's where I went for undergrad, I went to Morgan State in Baltimore for a year before going to Purchase. So I was at a historically Black college for the first year, on the year that D'Angelo's first album came out, that Brown Sugar album. And it's really interesting to think about what that experience was like for me in that school, in that community, taking in his kind of genius, really.
Yeah. Beautiful. So you founded Abraham in Motion in 2006, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first work, pardon me, was Fading into Something Tangible. Am I right there?
Yeah, that was our first. That was the first program, like our first evening length program.
Okay.
And somewhere, I think I put it back in the guest room. I just pulled out the flyer because I'm doing some work on my own, some administrative work, and I just pulled out the flyer.
This title, it's an evocative title. My first feeling was a becoming or a landing. Can you speak to this seminal step of creating that first evening, but also founding your company? You are only 29. So maybe speaking with some maturity on that now, looking back.
Yeah, sure, thanks. I mean, I started the company when I was in grad school. I was finishing up at NYU at the time, and I was looking. I think I had just finished. I'd just done a project with Kevin Wynn, one of my teachers. I had at Purchase, and kind of like huge. He wouldn't want to be a mentor to me because he doesn't like that type of title, but he's a mentor and friend and someone that I've looked up to since I first saw his work in, like, I think it was spring of 1996 before I transferred to Purchase. I decided to work with some of the dancers that were in that project. I really loved Amber Parker, who we mentioned earlier. Amber was in that show. That's when I met Amber and Sidra Bell. They were both dancing in that project. And we really hit it off. There were a lot of dancers. Sharo Tang was in that project as well. She later danced for A.I.M. But it also was a good time for me to think about who I was studying with at NYU and dancing, creating works for in the undergrad and grad program. Who did I still have close connections with at Purchase? And who was I also meeting from taking classes around New York? Because like a lot of us, even if you're studying at a university in the city, it makes the most sense to go out and take classes on the weekends or something, so you can really do you, as Shalvar would say. So that was really important to me. And that's what really kind of started to solidify our company. I started presenting a lot of solo work over the years, and starting to try and get group work out there. I felt like if I was doing so, it would be really helpful to have some kind of name to kind of ground the organization some way. And that first evening length program happened in my hometown of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Please vote Pennsylvania, please, and vote the right way.
I know. I live here now, and I'm like, hey, my vote really matters in this.
Yes, yeah. I have a story there, but that's an off-camera story. Okay. But, yeah, so it was important. It's also important for me to think about that aspect of having my first evening length show happen in my hometown, bringing this company that I was building back to where I'm from. Yeah. And for several years thereafter, I was able to have every work have its world premiere in Pittsburgh before going wherever it went from there. I wish I could get back to that. Hopefully we can in some way, but I also at this point understand the game and know that like if there are resources to help support that work in, you know, I don't even know, in Poland, I'm gonna go to Poland and premiere that work and then make my way to Pittsburgh and then New York and wherever else.
I hope Poland heard that. Okay, so in 2018, you created and performed Indie, a full-length solo, after well over a decade of choreography. How did reimagining of the self and the steps surface in the solo? What transformations happened during that creative process that perhaps you might have expected, but also did not expect?
Yeah, thanks for that. I think it's a, you know, doing that solo was something that I had always wanted to do, but being who I am or how I am, I don't want to take up space. So I kind of stopped doing solos in a way that like put a lot of time and energy into it in a way that I would have liked, because I didn't want to take opportunities away from my dancers because they're gorgeous. So I was like, who wants to see me? Let's see them. And I actually was making a project, a group work called Absent Matter for the company a few years previously, and making a few years prior, working with Tamisha Guy, one of my company dancers. The two of us were working on a solo for that dance. And I kept watching her do it, and I was like, I can't do it nearly as good as she can. So I'm just gonna take myself out. And then when we had our Joy season, and it was like one of our first, if not our first, like, I think it was our first fully like A.I.M Joy season, I was kind of sad at the end because I didn't have much time on stage really being selfish or whatever. I was like, I want to be on this stage. This is an iconic stage. So, you know, I like made like a 2-minute solo, if that, in that show where I'm actually not allowed to go on stage. I'm dancing on the, I wasn't allowed to dance on the lip of the stage. I think I'm just like on the side. But a lot of those feelings are what led me to make Indie. And a lot of what Indie became, in a lot of ways, is a series of graduations. You'll hear Carol Walker, the former dean of Purchase.
I love her.
I love Carol. I love CW. You'll hear her kind of saying my name and some of my classmates' names in the audio of that work. There's a lot of just names being called from graduation, kind of reminding me of what it was like watching my mother watching people walk across the stage because I was sitting on the stage. Jennifer Goggins, who a lot of people may know from the Cunningham world, she and I graduated in the same class, and we were receiving awards that year. So we sat on stage and watched, you know, our classmates and our families watching everyone kind of going across the stage. So a lot of that is part of what that work is, a lot of reflecting on previous work. There's a lot of shedding of different metaphors and ways and memories and history in that work. Ultimately to get me to hopefully a new place. I think it got me to a new place in some of my group work, more so than the solo work.
So you went in with the idea that you wanted it to be transformative, or was this was this really how it started evolving?
I really felt like I had something that I wanted to say.
Okay.
I feel like I had something I wanted to say, and that I still had a body that was capable of moving and being somewhat articulate. And I felt like at the age I was at that time, it was important for me to recognize that within myself and not be so. I think it's easy for us as choreographers to be like, now I'm a choreographer, I'm not going to dance anymore. And I think I have such a complicated relationship with dance and dancing versus choreographing that that's played in my mind in a myriad of ways. So this was an opportunity for me to say, I love movement. I love movement exploration. I love dance theater. I love having an opportunity to kind of do all of those things. I love all of the accoutrements that come along with performance, with the exception of the audience, because that's the scary part for me. I love the costume. I love the set design. I love the lights. I love the music and hearing it in that way, the theatricality of it all. And so that was important for me to be able to explore. But ultimately, really, I wish that was like an evening like solo. It was probably like 20 minutes or something like that. And it was it was a doozy to do. I was working with Risa Steinberg on it. She was kind of a bit of a choreographic advisor for me for the project. And I kind of like made a draft, and she's like, I would start doing these kind of like off things that were a little bit more static in the body. And she's like, now see, that's interesting. And so I kept like, I was listening to her, following her suggestions, and it wound up being exhausting. I was like, this is supposed to be, what happened to the easy free part? So now when I have to do that, I'm like, oh, that dance is too hard.
Yeah. It's funny about harmony, right? Harmony is overrated.
Yeah.
I think it really is, like what Risa said about the static, right? It's like, that's the interesting part, because within that is a journey, is a question, is a place that you got to get out of. I love the negotiation part. And it's funny, perhaps this is true for some choreographers, but that division of choreographer and dancer has been something I've grappled with it the other way. I have felt so often like I'm a part of the group there that I've gotten into hot water because sometimes like a question of respect comes in because I make myself so much a part of the group, even though I'm making up steps like you. I have a collaborative room, so I really want people to give their voice. Those lines, especially now, I'm talking about the ballet world, can be really, they're still so set about hierarchy. And where I danced, it wasn't, with Frankfurt, that was kind of erased, and we were in the mosh pit together, and that's what I like.
Yeah.
I like the feeling of the being, and like you said, getting to know these people. And so it's interesting. Yeah, because I'm a few years older than you, so it's like how to renegotiate this body so I can still translate movement through myself to them. That is like, it's really becoming a head scratcher sometimes.
Yeah. I'm definitely in that place now, and I'm like, what can I offer? And I have to constantly remind myself that there's still value in what I can do and what I can bring into the space.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Has the role of visiting professor in residence at UCLA shifted your ideas of art making or of disseminating knowledge?
Yeah, sure. I love teaching. I love it in so many ways. Sometimes I joke about, like, people make comments about J Lo. They say that, like, she sucks the energy from the young to make herself younger. I'm like, maybe there's something to it. I love my students. I mean, sometimes I get really misty being around them, because I remember this past year, because we're still kind of, oh yeah, because it's the fall now. I'm like, where are we? But the last time I was on campus to teach, let's say, when I started that quarter out, I remember just maybe like the second class, I just got kind of emotional, because it was so exciting and inspiring to see this young generation respecting each other, waiting to hear each other speak, or waiting to hear what the other person had to say, acknowledging each other's voice and differences in a way that respected their uniqueness. They spoke in such a supportive way that went beyond, they understood and recognized when someone said their gender pronoun is they, them, theirs. It was just so beautiful to just watch that. Seemed so natural for that class to just kind of be that respectful, like that's just intuitive for them in a way that I think, it's a new day. So I love that. I love what they make, and that's part of what inspires me as well. I can definitely say, after teaching, this is now my 5th year that I'm going into now. I do think about my work in a different way, in an exciting way. I think I've kind of returned in a lot of ways to popular music in some way, because of maybe the work that I've been playing with or working with my students. It was always part of the work at some point, and then there are points where there's a bit of departure from using pop music. But there's something to it that I think the way that I'd like to approach it can continue to evolve. But the connections that I draw with my students with that in mind is exciting. And it's exciting for me to try and talk to them about going beyond what they know with music and try to take risks with rhythm and dynamics and space and energy. And to just, I think one of the key things that kind of draws me to academia is just seeing the results, really. I don't feel like we see them. I don't personally see them in the same way in the studio when I'm creating, maybe because it's a longer process, but there's something about the 10-week quarter system that I'm in, where when I'm teaching choreography or composition classes, I see everyone listening to my feedback and applying it either themselves or watching how their friends are applying it, and then be like, and that makes me so happy. I'm like, you're with me, I love it. I love it so much. And I love the artists that they are. They're just so exciting.
And that age
Yeah.
is intoxicating, because they're on the precipice, and it's all they're ready for the courage. They're ready to be infused with courage. They're ready, they're the best kind of rebel. I'm with you. It's beautiful.
The first year that I was teaching at the university, I had a small class that I was calling Embodying Solo Practice. So they were all working on solo, creating solo works throughout that quarter. And I remember one of the first times they had to do a showing, one student just kept stopping. They were just so nervous, and everyone was like, you got it. And it just, it almost made me cry. I'm like, you all are so supportive of each other. I just love this so much. It's just so beautiful to be in a space where that's so much at the forefront.
And as you said, also hopeful, because they're our future.
Yeah.
It makes one have hope, right?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Lord knows I'm a downer at heart, so it's great to see. It's great to see, possibility.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get into the last three questions that I ask everybody, this is kind of tied in. I guess it could be, is there someone you would like to create with that you have not yet done?
It's always tricky saying these things out loud, isn't it?
And you don't have to. I can go to the
fine.
next question, which is, do you have a favorite or impactful memory? So if you want to dodge that other question.
No. This is not a debate. I can answer the questions. Yeah, I mean.
No, actually, we should be on the debate to show how we answer questions.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think there are people that I've created for that I would love to create again for is probably part of the thing.
Okay.
Yeah, I think ultimately what I'm interested in is an opportunity to make a hybrid project where I get to bring together some of these brilliant collaborators I've worked with over the years and bring them all together in a way to kind of like thinking about what Complexions was in the mid 90s, very well, having like Jody Gates, someone we both know and love, dancing next to Sarita Allen, like Goddess, just like thinking about how to create a special project that does something like that would be really exciting to me. I'd love to have more of an opportunity to work with sometimes some non-dancers, whatever that means. But people, yeah, I have a lot of my dream. This is my dream book, not dream project book. Yes. So there's that. But I'd love to keep having opportunities to work with some of the people I've only gotten to work with just even one time. Mm-hmm. And maybe bring some of them together for a special project would be really, really marvelous.
Yeah. All right. So do you have an insight or daily inspiration about living a creative life? I might have many, but if there's one right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the insight that I would have during this time that we're in, because it's so reflective and introspective, is based on trust. And I think trust is so paramount in every aspect of what we do. I realized maybe actually in the process of making indie, going back to indie a little bit, how important that was, because I was taking yoga a lot with my teacher in LA. His name's Chris Reed, and trying new things. And I remember being in class one day and allowing self-doubt to seep in. And I was like falling out of a couple poses that like I've never had an issue with. I'm like, what is going on here? And I said to myself, after that experience, knowing that I was about to get back on stage, I can't do that ever again, because I wound up having a performance where I was entering the first night, felt great. The second night, I was so worried about trying to accomplish what I did on night one that it was a failure, and I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust what I know. I didn't trust what my body can do and what it holds. And more than that, thinking again about this here and now, this element of trust now as it relates to a company and a staff, and realizing that trust is not something that you can just say you have and then move about your day. It's something that every single day has to be renegotiated, every day. And that's on both sides. I do think that people take that for granted with a director or artistic director or choreographer, et cetera. But it's something that has to be renegotiated every single day. And that's something that I'm really trying to be that much more attuned to as we make our way back into the studio. And as I make my way to like my next Zoom meeting or phone call, whatever. Will someone tell me if there's a hole in my shirt? Will someone tell me, like, all of these things, and that goes both ways. It's not even a blame if they don't, because maybe there's something in me that didn't make them feel comfortable to feel like they could say this thing to me without me snapping off, which isn't going to happen. I'd be like, bless you, I love you all the more. But you have to think about what your role is in that trust.
Yeah. And how I love the renegotiation of trust every day. Man, if we could teach that,
Yeah.
that's beautiful. I think it could be taught. I think it could be brought up in a class. I can say, let's talk about this. Let's write about this. I think to plant that seed early, man, that would affect a young person's whole life. Because that's also in relation. You're talking about relationship, but that's also between two people in an intimate relationship, and then the intimacy of creating together. Man, that's beautiful. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So this is also could be a whole show. I always ask the question though, in supporting and building a more equitable dance community, what do you believe, and this is the big part of it, needs to be shifted or changed?
Yeah, it's a big question.
I know. And I should probably shift it so it gets more pointed. Like, I know there are many aspects. Is there one right now that seems pressing?
I don't know, because I think the thing for me is I'm trying to think about all of the different points of entry into who might be asking that question and who might be answering that question. And I think there's a part of, and I really hope this doesn't come out the wrong way, but I think there's a part of the education around resources, opportunities, and hardships that I think isn't always translated to younger generations. And that those younger generations could also wind up being my age now, but I'm just saying it's not something that is continuously passed on. So it's like if you see an artist that receives a lot of grants or something, you have no idea how many times they were turned down by those grants prior to. You just see someone getting something that you may not be getting. So it is a bigger thing and a bigger conversation. What I hope maybe I can kind of say and or do in this answer is think about the span of time and the work that can happen now to, and I'm sorry to say, 10 to 20 years from now, see its real effects, because I think part of that is it's not about opportunity so much as verbal support in a lot of ways to young dancers, young artists, young thinkers, to let them know that they can. And that seed of I can will ultimately create whatever opportunities we want or need. This goes beyond monetary needs. I think some of the best work has been made and created with little to no funds. So that's a part of the equation, but the other aspect of it is thinking about who's been at the head of certain organizations and how can that shift, and how are we telling our young artists of different genders or gender nonconforming folks or BIPOC community, how are we saying to all of us that you can, and in a way that, like, say you're terrible at Petit Allegro, you're maybe not going to be that likely to want to choreograph one or continue to do one. So how do you feel like 10, 15 years from now, you will want to be going into creating that type of work if you haven't been told when you're at a young age, you may not be strong with this right now, but you can do this and you can change the game. It's all patterning, break it down to someone and give them that information so that they can in the future. I think that's more the thing for me. I think the disparity aspect of part of resources and is such a layered conversation. But I think ultimately it comes down to knowing that it is a much longer game than I think anyone wants to admit and or acknowledge. There are obviously things that can be done in the here and now, but it's much more important to be thinking about that longer game.
I've referenced planting the seeds, right?
Right.
I really believe in what you're saying. And when I was teaching quite a bit, when I was living in New York, things shifted when I got more choreography. I couldn't be connected to a semester-long situation anymore. It wasn't fair to the kids.
Yeah.
But I totally believe in the, I say things like, you know, make choice and a habit of, you can change it if you don't like what you've done, but get in the habit of choice. Get in the habit of saying that you can do this. Get in the habit. I'm coaching a kid right now on exactly that, on Petit Allegro. And I'm saying, so what do you have? Don't focus on what you don't have. Focus on what you have and the information in your body already. Now let's talk about the steps to get the speed, because Petit Allegro is what? It is speed. It's also coordination. It's also what, but if you can understand speed in another way, which is speed, we all know is not a holding of the breath. It's a breath.
Yeah.
And so yes, the can, and referencing something right at the beginning of what you said, which is, it's important to acknowledge the people that came before you. That's not a bad thing. You don't take away from yourself.
Right.
So I also teach that. I was like, yeah, acknowledge for who you've learned from. Like you mentioned Carol Walker, and you've mentioned, you know, Amber and the people that worked with you early on. This seems also to be a little bit of a schism right now. You know, it's okay to recognize the people you've learned from. It makes you richer.
It does. It does so many things. It's also honor. It's just yeah. I mean, my choreography wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for a Kevin Wynn or Larry Clark, who taught me. And you know, there's a rhythm to that man's teaching. You know, that maybe, you know, people may laugh at the students. Are like, oh, you know, he's like beat that, badoo, beat that, badoo. But like, you think about that and trying to figure that out. And he would always champion phrasing. So yeah, there are opportunities in whatever he's doing to kind of play against that. And that's really, for me, I love watching dancers that take those types of risks, but take them humbly, you know what I'm saying?
Yes. Yeah, take them humbly.
Yeah.
I always say it's the, you know, just show me the work.
Right.
You don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can, but yeah, anyhow. Man, wow. Kyle, thank you, man. It was just, what an insightful and inspirational, generous person to sit down and have a chat with. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure, right? Our first talk together.
Zoom.
I'll reach for you. There it is again. So if you wouldn't mind staying with me while I do the last bit, I do want to say your website's included on the description page that will be right under this video, everyone. So that is there. But do you have another tag or some other ways we can find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that. You can follow me and the company both on the IG. Mine is, there's a lot of underscores between each thing. Kyle_Abraham_original_recipe. So Kyle Abraham original recipe is mine. The company's is A.I.M by Kyle Abraham. We're both on all the things. Yeah, all of the things. The website you said is already mentioned.
It's written. Right.
That's written, yeah. So the website is Abraham. Oh, actually, we changed it. It's now A.I.M by Kyle Abraham. So you can find us. It's .org. Yeah, and we're pretty. I think try and be as responsive as we can be. People reach out for questions or comments, etc., etc.
And I just want to make one more reminder about the benefit on Wednesday, but the entire week. So that's also coming up. And like I said, in the description box below the video, you will find a short bio, very short, by from Kyle, but also his website. So we have new guests every week, 2 new guests every week. And our next guest is going to be the artistic director of Kansas City Ballet, Devon Carney. Now, my thank you section, Gracie, the wonderful intern that has been by my side for all of these now 38 shows. Thank you so much, Gracie. I want to thank my courageous, supportive, incredible dance community that I'm a part of. You give me strength every day. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And Kyle, thank you so much. It was a pleasure to sit down and talk with you.
Very mutual.
I hope that we do this sooner than later. And everyone keep reimagining that creativity, because there's a world. See you next time. Thank you. Bye.